You have exactly 3 seconds to explain why you are in my lap before my men remove you from this building, he said quietly. His tone was not loud or aggressive. Somehow that made it more terrifying. This was a man who did not need to yell to be frightening. Sofia's mouth opened but no sound came out. Her brain was screaming at her to move, to apologize, to do something, but her body seemed to have forgotten how to function. She was intensely aware of his arm, which had automatically moved to her waist when she fell, probably to stop her from tumbling onto the floor. She was aware of how close their faces were. She was aware that she was still holding a tray of champagne and that this entire situation was completely insane. She started, then stopped. What could she possibly say? I am sorry, I thought you were a chair, sounded ridiculous. I was hiding from my ex-boyfriend, sounded even worse. Please do not kill me seemed too dramatic, but looking at the serious faces of the men surrounding them, maybe it was not dramatic enough. Before Sofia could force any words out, she heard a familiar voice from behind her. Ryan. He was walking in their direction, still talking to his parents, getting closer with every second. In moments he would see her, and this already terrible situation would become absolutely unbearable. The handsome, dangerous man must have seen something in Sofia's expression, some flash of panic or fear, because his eyes shifted to look past her at whatever she was staring at. His gaze landed on Ryan, then moved back to Sofia's face. For a moment, something like understanding crossed his features. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room, including Sofia. He smiled. Not a big smile, just a slight curve of his lips, but it transformed his entire face. He suddenly looked younger, almost kind, though his eyes remained sharp and calculating. He leaned close to Sofia's ear, so close that she could smell his cologne and feel his breath against her skin. When he whispered, his voice sent shivers down her spine for reasons she did not want to examine too closely. If you want to live, he said softly, pretend you know me. Before Sofia could respond or even process what he meant, his arm tightened slightly around her waist. Not painfully but firmly, like a statement. He shifted in the chair, adjusting their position so that Sofia was sitting more comfortably, almost as if they had planned this. To anyone watching, it would look like they were together, like Sofia belonged exactly where she was. Gentlemen, the man said, his voice now carrying to the men who were still watching them with tense expressions. Stand down. The lady is with me. The effect was immediate. The men relaxed, their hands moving away from whatever weapons they had been reaching for. The silver-haired woman smiled and turned back to her conversation. The other guests, seeing that there was no threat, resumed their chatter and laughter. Just like that, the crisis was over. Except Sofia's personal crisis was just beginning. She was sitting in a strange man's lap, his arm was around her, and she had no idea what to do next. She could feel Ryan getting closer, could hear his voice more clearly now. The man beneath her seemed completely at ease, as if beautiful women fell into his lap at parties all the time. Maybe they did. He picked up a glass of whiskey from the small table beside the chair and took a slow sip, his other arm still holding Sofia steady. Your ex-boyfriend, I assume? He murmured, so quietly that only she could hear. The blonde one who looks like he owns the world but probably only owns his father's credit card? Despite her terror, despite the insanity of the situation, Sofia felt a surprised laugh bubble up in her chest. She managed to turn it into a cough at the last second. How did this stranger read the situation so perfectly? Ryan was almost upon them now. Sofia could hear him saying something about the auction items, and then his voice stopped mid-sentence. She knew without looking that he had seen her. She forced herself to turn her head, to meet his gaze with as much confidence as she could pretend to have. Ryan's face went through several expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, confusion, disbelief, and then something that looked almost like fear. His eyes were not on Sofia though. They were on the man holding her. Mr. Park, Ryan said, and his voice was different now. Respectful. Almost scared. I did not know you would be attending tonight. Mr. Park. Sofia filed the name away, though it told her nothing useful. The man's arm tightened almost imperceptibly around her waist, a silent message that she should follow his lead. Ryan Mitchell, Mr. Park said, and Sofia was surprised that he knew Ryan's name. Your father mentioned you might be here. I was just getting acquainted with Miss. He paused, looking at Sofia expectantly. Chin, Sofia supplied, her voice coming out steadier than she felt. Sofia Chin. Miss Chin, Mr. Park continued smoothly as if they had practiced this conversation. She was just telling me about her studies at Metropolitan Art College. Fascinating program. I have been considering making a donation. Sofia wanted to ask how he knew where she went to school, but she bit her tongue. Maybe her name badge mentioned it. Maybe he was just guessing. Maybe he was some kind of mind reader. At this point, nothing would surprise her. Ryan's face had gone slightly pale. He nodded quickly, almost like a bow. Of course. I will leave you to your evening then. It was good to see you, sir. He barely glanced at Sofia before turning and walking quickly away, his parents following with confused expressions. They watched him go, and Sofia felt some of the tension drain from her shoulders. The immediate danger was over. Ryan had not embarrassed her, had not even really acknowledged her beyond that quick glance. Whatever power this Mr. Park had, it was enough to make Ryan Mitchell run away with his tail between his legs. The moment Ryan disappeared into the crowd, Sofia scrambled off Mr. Park's lap as if it had suddenly caught fire. She stood there awkwardly, still holding her tray, her face burning with embarrassment. Now that the panic had passed, she was fully aware of what she had just done. She had sat on a stranger. She had let him hold her. She had pretended to be his friend or girlfriend or whatever people must have thought they were. Mr. Park stood as well, smoothly and gracefully, and Sofia realized she had been right. He was very tall. He looked down at her with an expression she could not read, his dark eyes studying her face as if memorizing every detail. "Thank you," Sofia said quickly. "I am so sorry for falling on you. I was not thinking. I was just trying to avoid. Well, you figured that part out. Thank you for not having your men throw me out or worse. I should get back to work now before someone notices I have been gone too long." She started to turn away, eager to escape this mortifying situation and process everything that had just happened. But Mr. Park's voice stopped her. "Miss Chin." She turned back reluctantly. He had moved closer, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. Up close he was even more handsome, which seemed unfair. Nobody should look that good while being that scary. "You now owe me a favor," he said simply. "I protected you tonight. Saved you from an embarrassing encounter with your ex-boyfriend. In my world, such things do not come free." Sofia's heart, which had just started to slow down, picked up speed again. "A favor? What kind of favor?" Mr. Park reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. It was black with silver lettering, simple and elegant. He held it out to her and Sofia took it automatically. The card read, "Jin Park, Private Consulting," with a phone number below. No address, no email, no other information. "I have not decided yet," Jin Park said. "But when I do I will call you. Make sure you answer." Sofia stared at the card, then at him. "How will you call me? You do not have my number." Jin smiled again, that same small curve of his lips that suggested he knew things she did not. "Miss Chin, I knew your name, your school, and your situation within 30 seconds of you landing in my lap. Getting your phone number will not be difficult." That should have been creepy. It should have been threatening. But the way he said it was almost playful? Like this was all some kind of game that he was very good at playing. Before Sofia could respond, one of the men who had almost pulled a gun earlier approached them. He was shorter than Jean but built like he spent every waking hour at the gym. He leaned close to Jean and whispered something in Korean. Jean nodded once, then looked back at Sofia. "I have to go," he said. "Remember, Miss Chin. When I call you answer. Consider it payment for tonight's rescue." He walked away then, the scary muscular man following him, and within seconds they had disappeared into the crowd. Sofia stood there for a long moment, holding the black business card and her tray of champagne, trying to understand what had just happened. She looked down at the card again, running her thumb over the raised silver letters. Jin Park. The name sounded familiar, like she should know it, but she could not place why. Something about the way everyone had reacted to him, the way Ryan had been so respectful and scared, told her that Jin Park was not just wealthy. He was powerful in a way that made people nervous. Sofia slipped the card into her pocket and returned to work, but for the rest of the evening she could not stop thinking about dark eyes and whispered warnings and the feeling of a stranger's arm around her waist. She had no idea that her ordinary life had just ended, and something much more dangerous and exciting was about to begin. When she finally got home at midnight, exhausted and confused, she found Isabella already asleep. Sofia got ready for bed in the dark, then lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling and wondering if Jin Park would really call her. Wondering what kind of favor he might ask for. Wondering why part of her, the part she did not want to admit existed, was hoping he would call soon. The black business card sat on her nightstand, gleaming slightly in the moonlight from the window, like a promise or a threat. Sofia fell asleep still thinking about it, and she dreamed of dark eyes and dangerous smiles and the way her heart had stopped when Jin Park whispered in her ear. She had no way of knowing that her life was about to become more complicated than she had ever imagined, that danger and romance were waiting for her just around the corner, and that falling into Jin Park's lap was either the luckiest or unluckiest thing that had ever happened to her. Only time would tell which one it would be. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Hotel sparkled like a jewelry box under the light of 3 massive crystal chandeliers. Sofia Chin stood near the kitchen doors, balancing a silver tray of champagne glasses in her slightly trembling hands. She wore a simple black dress that the catering company provided, her dark hair pulled back into a neat bun that was already giving her a headache. The scholarship students from Metropolitan Art College had been given a choice: volunteer at the annual charity gala or miss out on the grant money that would pay for next semester's supplies. For Sofia, who could barely afford rent in the tiny apartment she shared with her best friend Isabella, there had been no choice at all. The ballroom was filled with the kind of people Sofia only saw in magazines. Women draped in silk and diamonds laughed behind their hands while men in perfectly tailored suits discussed business deals worth more money than Sofia would see in her lifetime. She moved carefully between the groups, offering drinks with a polite smile that she hoped looked natural. Her feet already hurt in the borrowed heels, and she had at least 3 more hours before the event would end. She tried to focus on the positive side. The hotel was beautiful, the music was lovely, and at least she was getting to see how the other half lived, even if it was from the position of hired help. Sofia had just returned her empty tray to the kitchen and picked up a fresh one when she stepped back into the ballroom, and her entire world tilted sideways. There, standing near the auction table where people were bidding thousands of dollars on donated artwork, was Ryan Mitchell, her ex-boyfriend. The same Ryan who had dated her for 6 months before she discovered he was also dating 2 other girls at the same time. The same Ryan who, when she confronted him, had laughed in her face and told all his friends that Sofia was crazy and jealous. The same Ryan whose lies had made her so uncomfortable at school that she had switched to evening classes just to avoid running into him. Her heart started pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Ryan was talking to an older couple, probably his parents, and he looked exactly the same. Perfectly styled blonde hair, that confident smile that she used to think was charming but now realized was just arrogant. He was wearing an expensive suit and laughing about something, completely at ease in this world of wealth and privilege. Of course he was here. His family probably donated half the money for this event. Sofia took a step backward, then another. She could not let Ryan see her like this, serving drinks while he stood there like a prince at his own party. She could already imagine what he would say, how he would smirk and make some comment about her knowing her place, or finding appropriate work. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment that she had not even experienced yet but knew was coming if he spotted her. She turned quickly, looking for anywhere to hide. The kitchen was too far away and there were too many people between her and the exit. Her eyes darted around desperately. Behind a marble pillar? No, too obvious. Behind the curtains? Even worse. Her panic was rising, making it hard to think clearly. Ryan was turning in her direction, still talking, but his eyes were starting to scan the room. In approximately 5 seconds he would see her. Without thinking, without planning, without any consideration for consequences, Sofia made a decision that would change her entire life. She saw a tall figure seated in a leather chair near the window, facing away from the crowd. The chair was one of several arranged in a quiet corner, meant for guests who wanted to rest or have private conversations. Sofia rushed toward it, her only thought being that she needed to disappear right now. She practically fell into what she thought was an empty chair beside the occupied one. Except it was not a chair at all. It was a lap. A very solid, very real, very much occupied lap belonging to a human being. Time seemed to freeze. Sofia found herself sitting on the legs of a man she had never met, her tray of champagne glasses somehow still balanced in her hands through sheer miracle. She could feel expensive fabric beneath her, the warmth of another person, and the sudden tension in the body she had just crashed into. Slowly, with the kind of dread usually reserved for horror movies, Sofia turned her head to see who she had just assaulted. The man was probably the most handsome person Sofia had ever seen in real life. He looked to be in his late 20s, with dark hair styled back from his face, sharp cheekbones, and eyes so dark they looked black in the dim lighting. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than Sofia's entire education, and even sitting down she could tell he was tall. But it was not his appearance that made Sofia's breath catch in her throat. It was the expression on his face and the reaction of everyone around them. Every person in their immediate area had stopped talking. Several men who had been standing nearby had actually reached inside their jackets, their faces hard and dangerous. A woman with silver hair gasped and brought her hand to her mouth. The handsome man beneath Sofia had gone completely still, like a tiger deciding whether to pounce or wait. Sofia realized with growing horror that she had not just sat on any random rich person. She had sat on someone important. Someone dangerous. Someone who made everyone else in the room look afraid. The man's eyes met hers, and Sofia saw something flash in them that might have been surprise or anger or possibly amusement. It was impossible to tell. His face was like a mask, revealing nothing. When he spoke, his voice was deep and smooth, with just a hint of an accent that made certain words sound different. Korean, Sofia thought randomly, though she could not have said how she knew. You have exactly 3 seconds to explain why you are in my lap before my men remove you from this building, he said quietly. His tone was not loud or aggressive. Somehow that made it more terrifying. This was a man who did not need to yell to be frightening. Sofia's mouth opened but no sound came out. Her brain was screaming at her to move, to apologize, to do something, but her body seemed to have forgotten how to function. She was intensely aware of his arm, which had automatically moved to her waist when she fell, probably to stop her from tumbling onto the floor. She was aware of how close their faces were. She was aware that she was still holding a tray of champagne and that this entire situation was completely insane. Every person in their immediate area had stopped talking. Several men who had been standing nearby had actually reached inside their jackets, their faces hard and dangerous. A woman with silver hair gasped and brought her hand to her mouth. The handsome man beneath Sofia had gone completely still, like a tiger deciding whether to pounce or wait. Sofia realized with growing horror that she had not just sat on any random rich person. She had sat on someone important. Someone dangerous. Someone who made everyone else in the room look afraid. The man's eyes met hers, and Sofia saw something flash in them that might have been surprise or anger or possibly amusement. It was impossible to tell. His face was like a mask, revealing nothing. When he spoke, his voice was deep and smooth, with just a hint of an accent that made certain words sound different. Korean, Sofia thought randomly, though she could not have said how she knew. What if I say no? She asked quietly. Then I will assign men to watch you from a distance, to make sure Victor's people do not approach you or threaten you. But Miss Jin, Sofia, you will spend every day looking over your shoulder, wondering if you are safe, wondering if the danger has passed. Is that really better than spending 1 month helping me resolve this situation? Sofia closed her eyes, pressing her forehead against the cool wall. How had her life gone from normal and boring to this? 1 week ago, her biggest problem was avoiding her ex-boyfriend and finishing her homework. Now she was talking to a criminal about fake dating and rival gangsters and being watched by dangerous people. If I agree, she said slowly, what exactly would I have to do? She could hear the relief in Jin's voice when he answered. You would move into my home temporarily for your safety and to make the relationship appear genuine. We would be seen together in public at a few key locations where Victor's people will observe us. You would attend some business dinners with me. We would need to appear comfortable with each other like a real couple. Nothing inappropriate, he added quickly. I would never ask you to do anything that would make you truly uncomfortable. This is strictly business. Sofia laughed, but it sounded slightly hysterical even to her own ears. Strictly business. Right. This is the weirdest business arrangement I have ever heard of. Perhaps, Jean agreed, and she thought she heard a smile in his voice. But it will keep you safe, and it will help me protect many other innocent people from Victor's violence. He has been trying to expand into territories where good families live, where children play. I have been stopping him, but if he destroys me, there will be nothing standing between him and those neighborhoods. I know you do not know me, Sofia, but I am asking you to trust me anyway. There was something in his voice that made Sofia believe him. Maybe she was being stupid. Maybe she was making the biggest mistake of her life. But she thought about children playing in neighborhoods, about families being hurt by someone worse than Jin Park, about the fact that she was apparently already in danger whether she liked it or not. 1 month, she said. Just 1 month and then I can go back to my normal life? 1 month, possibly less if Victor backs down sooner. You have my word. Sofia took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. Okay. I will do it. I will be your fake girlfriend. She heard Jean exhale as if he had been holding his breath. Thank you, Sofia. I know this is asking a lot. A car will pick you up from your apartment tomorrow morning at 9. Pack enough clothes and personal items for a month. Is there anyone who will worry about you being gone? Sofia thought about Isabella, her roommate and best friend. My roommate will ask questions. Tell her you won a contest or got a temporary job opportunity, something that will keep her from worrying but not reveal the truth. The less people know, the safer everyone will be. They talked for a few more minutes about practical details, and then Jean said goodbye and hung up. Sofia stood there on the sidewalk, her phone still pressed to her ear, trying to process what she had just agreed to. She was going to live with a criminal. She was going to pretend to be his girlfriend. She was going to enter a world of danger and violence and things she did not understand. She should have been terrified. Part of her was. But another part, a small reckless part she did not know she had, was curious. What would it be like to live in Jin Park's world, even for just a month? What would she learn about him, about herself? Sofia finally started walking home again, her mind already spinning with the lie she would tell Isabella, with thoughts of what to pack, with worries about what she was getting herself into. Above her, the sky had turned dark, stars beginning to appear in the spaces between city lights. Sofia made a wish on the first star she saw, hoping that she would survive the next month with her life and heart intact. She had no way of knowing that both were about to be tested in ways she could never have imagined. The next morning arrived too quickly. Sofia had barely slept, her dreams filled with dark eyes and dangerous men and a feeling of falling that never quite stopped. She packed a suitcase while Isabella was in the shower, trying to figure out how to explain this without revealing the truth. When Isabella emerged, Sofia was ready with her story. She had been offered a temporary position as a private art tutor for a wealthy family, live-in for a month, with pay that would cover her rent and then some. It was a lie that came too easily to Sofia's lips, and she felt guilty watching Isabella's face light up with excitement. Sofia, that is amazing. This could be a great networking opportunity. Rich people always know other rich people who need tutors. You could build a whole client base from this. Isabella hugged her tightly. I am so happy for you. Sofia hugged her back, trying not to think about how wrong this felt, how much she was deceiving her best friend. But Jean had been right. The less Isabella knew, the safer she would be. That was what Sofia told herself anyway. At exactly 9 o'clock, Sofia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Car is outside. She looked out the window and saw a sleek black vehicle parked in front of their building, so out of place in their modest neighborhood that several people were staring at it. Sofia grabbed her suitcase, said goodbye to Isabella one more time and headed downstairs. Her hands were shaking as she pushed open the building's front door. A man in a dark suit stood beside the car, the same muscular man who had been with Jean at the gala. Up close, she could see he had kind eyes despite his intimidating appearance. Miss Chin, he said with a slight bow. My name is Marcus Wei. I am Mr. Park's head of security and his closest friend. I will be one of your main points of contact during your stay with us. If you need anything at all, you come to me. Understood. Sofia nodded, not trusting her voice. Marcus opened the car door for her, taking her suitcase and placing it in the trunk. The inside of the car was even more luxurious than she expected. Leather seats, tinted windows, a privacy screen between the front and back. Sofia settled into the seat and buckled her seatbelt, watching her apartment building disappear as Marcus pulled into traffic. The drive took about 30 minutes, leaving the city center and heading toward the hills where the truly wealthy lived. Sofia watched the scenery change through the window. Buildings getting nicer, streets getting cleaner, fewer people walking and more luxury cars driving past. Finally, Marcus turned onto a private road marked with a discreet sign that Sofia barely had time to read. They drove through a gate that opened automatically, and suddenly Sofia was looking at the most beautiful house she had ever seen. It was not quite a mansion, but it was close. 3 stories of modern architecture with huge windows, surrounded by manicured gardens and tall trees that provided privacy from the street. There was a fountain in the circular driveway, and Sofia counted at least 6 other cars parked near what looked like a garage big enough to hold a dozen vehicles. Marcus parked near the front entrance and came around to open Sofia's door. She stepped out slowly, her eyes wide as she took in the scope of the property. This was where Jin Park lived. This was going to be her home for the next month. The front door opened and Jin himself stepped out. He was wearing casual clothes today, dark jeans and a black sweater that somehow made him look even more handsome than he had in his suit at the gala. His hair was slightly less styled, falling across his forehead in a way that made him look younger, more approachable. He smiled when he saw Sofia, that same small curve of lips that she was starting to recognize. Sofia, he said, coming down the steps to meet her. Welcome to my home. I hope the drive was not too uncomfortable. Sofia shook her head, still too overwhelmed to speak much. Jean gestured for her to follow him inside and Marcus brought her suitcase. The interior of the house was just as impressive as the exterior. High ceilings, modern furniture that looked expensive and comfortable, artwork on the walls that Sofia thought might actually be original pieces, not prints. Jean led her through the main living area into a wide hallway. The house has 15 rooms total, but most of them are unused. My bedroom is on the third floor. I have prepared a room for you on the second floor, far enough away to give you privacy but close enough that security can reach you quickly if needed. He opened a door and stepped aside to let Sofia enter first. The bedroom was bigger than her entire apartment. There was a massive bed with soft-looking pillows, a desk by the window, a sitting area with a couch and television, and 2 doors that led to what Sofia assumed was a closet and bathroom. Everything was decorated in calming shades of cream and blue, and fresh flowers sat in a vase on the desk. "This is too much," Sofia said quietly, running her hand along the soft comforter on the bed. "I do not need all this space." Jean leaned against the doorframe, watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "I want you to be comfortable here, Sofia. I know this situation is not ideal, and you are doing me a great favor by agreeing to help. The least I can do is make sure you have everything you need." Marcus set Sofia's suitcase down near the closet and nodded to Jean. "I will let Cook know there is one more for meals. Miss Chin, do you have any food allergies or preferences?" Sofia blinked, surprised that they had a cook. Of course they had a cook. No allergies. I am not picky about food." Marcus smiled, the expression transforming his serious face. "Cook will be happy to hear that. She likes to try new recipes. Lunch will be ready in an hour. Jean will show you around and explain the house rules." He left, closing the door quietly behind him. Suddenly, Sofia was alone with Jean in her new bedroom, and the situation felt more real and more dangerous than it had on the phone. Jean seemed to sense her nervousness because he stepped further into the room, keeping a respectful distance. "I know this is overwhelming," he said gently. "Why do you not take some time to unpack and settle in? I will come back in 30 minutes to give you a tour of the house and explain how everything works. Does that sound acceptable?" Sofia nodded, grateful for some time alone to process everything. Jean moved toward the door, then paused and turned back. "Sofia, I meant what I said yesterday. I will never ask you to do anything that truly makes you uncomfortable. If at any point this becomes too much, if you want to leave, we will find another way to handle the situation with Victor. Your safety and well-being are more important than any business arrangement." He left before Sofia could respond, closing the door softly behind him. Sofia stood in the middle of her new bedroom, in a house that belonged to a criminal, preparing to pretend to be the girlfriend of a man she barely knew, and wondered for the 100th time if she had lost her mind. But then she thought about Jin's words, the genuine concern in his voice. She thought about Marcus's kind eyes and the way Jean had asked about her comfort. Maybe this world was not as dark as she had feared. Maybe Jin Park was not the monster she had expected. Or maybe, Sofia thought as she began to unpack her suitcase, she was already starting to fall for a man she should be running away from. That thought scared her more than anything else. The call came exactly 7 days later, on a Tuesday afternoon when Sofia was walking home from her evening art history class. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Sofia was thinking about the essay she needed to finish by Friday. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, displaying a number she did not recognize. Normally, she would have let it go to voicemail, assuming it was a spam call or someone trying to sell her something she could not afford. But something made her answer. "Hello," she said, pressing the phone to her ear while adjusting her backpack on her shoulder. "Miss Chen." The voice was immediately familiar. Deep, smooth, with that slight accent that made her name sound different. "Jin Park. I hope I am not interrupting anything important." Sofia stopped walking, her feet freezing on the sidewalk while other pedestrians flowed around her like water around a stone. Her heart started beating faster, the same way it had at the gala when she had accidentally sat in his lap. She had thought about that night constantly over the past week, wondering if she had imagined how strange and dangerous it all felt. Apparently she had not imagined anything. "Mr. Park," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "No, you are not interrupting. I am just walking home from school." "Good. Then you have time to talk." It was not a question. "Do you remember our agreement? You owe me a favor for helping you avoid your ex-boyfriend." Sofia bit her lip, looking around at the normal people doing normal things. Buying coffee, walking dogs, checking their phones. None of them knew she was having a conversation with someone who had scared Ryan Mitchell into running away like a frightened rabbit. None of them would believe her if she told them. "I remember," she said quietly. "What kind of favor do you need?" There was a pause on the other end of the line, long enough that Sofia wondered if the connection had dropped. Then Jean spoke again, his voice more serious than before. "I need you to be my girlfriend." Sofia was glad she had stopped walking because she definitely would have tripped and fallen. She let out a startled laugh before she could stop herself. "I'm sorry, what? You need me to be your what?" My girlfriend, Jin repeated as if this was a perfectly reasonable request. Or rather, I need you to pretend to be my girlfriend. For approximately 1 month, possibly longer depending on how the situation develops. Sofia's mind was spinning. This had to be a joke. People did not call strangers and ask them to be fake girlfriends. That was something that happened in movies, not in real life. Not in her life. Mr. Park, I do not understand. Why would you need a fake girlfriend? I'm sure you could find plenty of real girlfriends if you wanted to. I mean, not that I am saying you are. I just mean. She was babbling now, her words tumbling over each other in confusion. Jin's voice became more serious, losing the slightly playful tone it had held before. Miss Jin, I am going to be honest with you because I believe you are smart enough to handle the truth. I'm not just a businessman. I run an organization that operates outside of normal legal boundaries. Some people would call me a criminal. Others would say I provide services that people need but cannot get through legal channels. The truth is somewhere in between. Sofia felt her stomach drop. She had suspected something was wrong that night at the gala, had sensed that Jin Park was dangerous in some way, but hearing him confirm it was different. He was telling her he was a criminal. A gangster. The kind of person her parents had always warned her to stay away from. Why are you telling me this? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Because I need you to understand what you would be agreeing to, Jin said. There is a man named Victor Choi who wants to take over my territory and my business. He is more violent than I am, more willing to hurt innocent people to get what he wants. Victor has one weakness. He believes that a man without family is a man without commitment, without anything to lose. He thinks such men are dangerous and unpredictable. Sofia was starting to understand, though she wished she was not. So if you have a girlfriend, a serious girlfriend, he will think you are more stable. More predictable. Exactly. He will believe I have something to lose, someone to protect. It will make him more cautious, more willing to negotiate instead of attack. I have tried other methods to resolve this situation peacefully, but Victor only respects strength and family. If I appear to have both, he will back down. It made a terrible kind of sense, but that did not make it any less crazy. Sofia started walking again, slowly, her mind racing. Why me? You could hire an actress or ask someone who already knows about your business. Why ask a college student you met for 30 seconds? Jin's answer was immediate. Because Victor has been watching me for months. He knows all the women in my organization, knows which ones might be pretending. But you? You are completely outside of that world. You are a normal girl with a normal life. When Victor's people investigate you, and they will find exactly what I want them to find. A college student studying art, working part-time jobs to pay for school, no criminal connections, no suspicious background. You are perfect precisely because you are ordinary. Sofia should have been offended by being called ordinary, but she was too busy feeling scared. You said Victor's people will investigate me. What does that mean exactly? It means they will look into your background, perhaps follow you for a few days, make sure you are who you appear to be. They will not harm you, Jin added quickly. Victor wants information, not violence. Not yet, anyway. But Miss Chin, I need to be completely clear with you about something. Sofia swallowed hard. What? When I helped you at the gala, when everyone saw you with me, you entered my world whether you meant to or not. Victor's men were at that party. They saw us together. They have already started asking questions about you. Whether you agree to help me or not, you are now on their radar. The safest place for you right now is actually beside me, where I can protect you. Sofia stopped walking again, this time leaning against a building wall because her legs felt shaky. She thought about that night, about how Jin's men had reached for weapons, about how Ryan had looked scared. She thought about danger and criminals and things she had only ever seen in movies. This could not be her life. This could not be happening. But Jin Park's voice in her ear was very real. The memory of his arm around her waist was very real. And the fear she felt right now, the cold certainty that he was telling her the truth, was very real too. 3 weeks had passed since Sofia moved into Jin's home, and she could barely recognize her own life anymore. The days had fallen into a strange routine that felt both surreal and oddly natural. She woke up each morning in her enormous bedroom, ate breakfast with Jin in the bright kitchen while he read the news on his tablet, and sometimes she would sketch in the garden while he took business calls in his office. In the evenings they would have dinner together, sometimes just the two of them, sometimes with Marcus and other members of Jin's organization who were surprisingly polite and normal-seeming. The strangest part was not the luxury or the danger lurking in the background. The strangest part was how comfortable Sofia had become with Jin himself. That first week had been awkward and tense, both of them carefully polite, maintaining proper distance like strangers forced to share a space. But gradually, something had shifted. Jin had a dry sense of humor that caught Sofia off guard and made her laugh. He asked thoughtful questions about her artwork and actually listened to her answers. He remembered small things like how she preferred her coffee or that she liked to read before bed. Sofia learned things about Jin too, things that complicated her understanding of who he was. She learned that he woke up every morning at 5 to practice martial arts in the home gym, moving through forms with a grace and focus that was beautiful to watch. She learned that he donated anonymously to 3 different children's charities and personally paid for medical treatments for families in his territory who could not afford them. She learned that he had never wanted this life, that he had inherited his position when his father died unexpectedly, and that he had been working for years to transition the organization away from its most violent operations. My father believed that fear was the only way to maintain power, Jin had told her one night as they sat in the living room, rain pattering against the windows. But fear only creates more violence, more enemies. I'm trying to build something different. It is slow work and there are people like Victor who see my methods as weakness. Sofia had listened to him talk about the burden of leadership, about the weight of being responsible for hundreds of people who depended on him for their livelihoods and protection. She saw the exhaustion in his eyes sometimes, the stress that came from constantly making impossible choices. He was not just a criminal. He was a man trying to do better in a world that made better difficult. Their first public appearance together had been at an upscale restaurant where Jin had a business meeting. Sofia had been nervous, wearing a dress that Jin had provided because nothing in her own wardrobe was suitable. The dress was simple but elegant, dark green silk that made her feel like someone else entirely. Jin had looked at her when she came downstairs and gone very still, his eyes moving over her in a way that made Sofia's cheeks warm. "You look beautiful," he had said simply, and the way he said it made Sofia believe he meant it. At the restaurant, Jin had been attentive and affectionate in a way that felt almost real. He had pulled out her chair, kept his hand on the small of her back as they walked, listened to her opinions about the menu as if they mattered. The men he was meeting with had watched them carefully, and Sofia knew they were looking for signs that the relationship was fake. But Jin was a good actor, or maybe it was not entirely acting because his touches felt genuine and his smiles seemed real. On the drive home that night, Sofia had asked him about it. "You are very good at pretending," she had said, trying to keep her voice light. Jin had looked at her for a long moment before answering. "What if I told you I was not entirely pretending?" Sofia had not known what to say to that, so she had looked out the window and pretended she had not heard the question. But she thought about it constantly in the days that followed, wondered what it meant, wondered if she was reading too much into simple words. Their second public appearance had been at an art gallery opening that Jin said Victor's people would definitely be watching. Sofia had been excited despite her nervousness because art was her world, the one place where she felt truly confident. She had walked through the gallery with Jin, discussing the pieces with genuine enthusiasm, explaining techniques and symbolism that Jin seemed genuinely interested in learning about. At one point, she had been so absorbed in analyzing a painting that she had grabbed Jin's hand without thinking, pulling him closer to show him a detail in the brushwork. Jin's fingers had closed around hers, warm and strong, and when Sofia realized what she had done and tried to pull away, he had held on. They had stood there in front of the painting, holding hands like a real couple, and Sofia's heart had raced in a way that had nothing to do with fear. That night, Jin had shown Sofia his own collection of art that he kept in a private room in the house. There were paintings and sculptures from around the world, some that Sofia recognized as being worth more money than she would ever see in her lifetime. But Jin did not talk about value or investment. He talked about beauty and meaning, about the stories behind each piece, about why he had chosen them. "Art reminds me that there is more to life than business and territory and survival," he had said, standing in front of a painting of a sunset over mountains. "It reminds me of what I am trying to protect, what I am trying to build toward." Sofia had felt something shift in her chest at those words, some barrier she had been maintaining starting to crumble. This was not the man she had expected when she agreed to this arrangement. Jin Park was complicated and thoughtful and kind in ways that surprised her constantly. Now, 3 weeks in, Sofia found herself thinking about Jin at strange times. Wondering what he was doing when they were in separate parts of the house, looking forward to their dinners together, feeling disappointed on nights when his business kept him out late. She told herself it was just because they were spending so much time together, that it was natural to develop some fondness for someone in close proximity. But deep down she knew it was more than that. The turning point came on a quiet Thursday evening. Jin had been teaching Sofia self-defense moves in the home gym, patient and careful as he showed her how to break someone's grip or protect herself if someone tried to grab her. Sofia had laughed at first, thinking it was unnecessary, but Jin had been serious. "I hope you never need these skills," he had said, "but I will not take chances with your safety." They had practiced for an hour, Jin's hands guiding her movements, correcting her stance, praising her when she did something right. Sofia had been intensely aware of every place their bodies touched, every time his breath stirred her hair when he stood behind her to adjust her posture. When they finally stopped, both slightly breathless from exertion, Jin had looked at her with an expression that made Sofia's stomach flip. "You learn quickly," he had said softly. "You are stronger than you think you are." Sofia had smiled, feeling proud of herself. "I have a good teacher." They had stood there in the gym, the space between them feeling charged with something Sofia did not want to name. Jin had raised his hand as if to touch her face, then stopped himself and stepped back. "We should have dinner," he had said, his voice slightly rough. "I think Cook made your favorite tonight." That night, unable to sleep, Sofia had wandered downstairs around midnight looking for something to drink. She had found Jin in the kitchen, of all places, wearing casual clothes and chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. Sofia had stood in the doorway, surprised. "I could not sleep either," Jin had said, glancing up with a small smile. "I am making ramen. Would you like some?" Sofia had nodded and come to sit at the kitchen island, watching him cook. It was such a normal, domestic scene. Just two people in a kitchen late at night, making simple food. Jin had told her stories about learning to cook from his grandmother in Korea, about how food was one of the few things that made him feel connected to a simpler time in his life. "Before all this," he had said, gesturing vaguely to encompass the house and everything it represented. "Before I became someone important and dangerous. When I was just Jin, a boy who wanted to be a chef someday." Sofia had asked him why he did not pursue that dream, and Jin had looked at her with such sadness that it made her chest ache. "Because duty does not care about dreams," he had said simply. "My father died and I had two choices: take over the organization or watch it fall apart and leave hundreds of people without protection or income. What kind of man would I be if I chose my own happiness over their survival?" They had eaten ramen together in comfortable silence, and Sofia had thought about sacrifice and duty and the weight of responsibility. She had reached across the counter and placed her hand over Jin's, not saying anything because there were no words adequate for what she was feeling. Jin had turned his hand over, lacing his fingers through hers, and they had sat like that until their food got cold. The next morning, everything changed. Sofia woke to the sound of urgent voices and running feet. She threw on a robe and rushed into the hallway to find Marcus and several other men in tactical gear moving quickly through the house. Her heart jumped into her throat. "What is happening?" she called out. Marcus turned to her, his face grim. "Victor's men have Isabella. They took her from your apartment an hour ago. We just got word." Sofia felt the world tilt sideways. Isabella. Her best friend, her roommate, the person she had lied to and left behind thinking everything was fine. Isabella was in danger because of Sofia, because of this arrangement, because Victor Choi wanted to hurt Jin through her. Jin appeared at the top of the stairs, fully dressed despite the early hour, his phone in his hand and his expression harder than Sofia had ever seen it. When he saw her, some of the hardness melted slightly. "Sofia, I need you to listen to me carefully," he said, coming down the stairs quickly. "Victor has taken Isabella to force you out of hiding. He thinks if he has your friend, you will come to him, and when you do, he will use you against me. We are not going to let that happen." Sofia was shaking, tears streaming down her face without her even realizing she was crying. "This is my fault. Isabella is in danger because of me. We have to save her, Jin. We have to get her back." Jin put his hands on Sofia's shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "We will get her back. I promise you, Sofia, we will bring Isabella home safely. But I need you to trust me and follow my instructions exactly. Can you do that?" Sofia nodded, trying to be brave even though she was terrified. Jin pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly for a moment before stepping back, all business again. "Marcus, gather everyone. We move in 30 minutes. Sofia, get dressed in something comfortable and practical. You are coming with us." Sofia's eyes widened. "What?" "Jin, no, I will just be in the way. I do not know anything about rescues or fighting or any of this." Jin's eyes were fierce and determined. "Victor expects me to leave you here where you are safe. But you are coming with us because you are going to help me turn his trap into our advantage. Trust me, Sofia. I have a plan." The next hour was a blur of activity. Jin explained his plan as they drove toward the location where Victor was holding Isabella. Victor had called and demanded a meeting. He would trade Isabella for Sofia and a promise that Jin would surrender half his territory. It was clearly a trap. Victor had no intention of honoring any deal. He planned to take both women and kill Jin. But Jin had been expecting something like this. He had been working with some members of Victor's organization who were unhappy with their leader's increasing violence and unpredictability. They had agreed to help Jin, to create an opportunity for him to rescue Isabella while exposing Victor's crimes to the authorities. I have been building a case against Victor for months, Jin explained as they drove. Evidence of his actual crimes. Murder, human trafficking, drug distribution to children. Things that even my organization considers beyond the acceptable. I have given everything to a prosecutor I trust. If Victor takes the bait tonight, we will have him on attempted kidnapping and assault as well. It will be enough to put him away for life. Sofia listened to Jin explain how they would use her as bait, how she would walk into Victor's trap with a wire recording everything, how Jin's people and undercover police would be surrounding the building ready to move in. It was risky and dangerous and absolutely insane. Why involve the police at all? Sofia asked. Why not just handle this your way? Jin looked at her seriously. Because I meant what I told you, Sofia. I'm trying to build something better than what my father left me. This is a chance to remove Victor without starting a war that would hurt innocent people. This is a chance to show that there is another way to resolve these conflicts. I am doing this for you, for Isabella, and for everyone else who deserves to live without fear. They arrived at an abandoned warehouse near the docks, the kind of place that showed up in every crime movie Sofia had ever seen. Marcus and Jin's other men surrounded the building, invisible in the darkness. Jin fitted Sofia with a small wire hidden under her clothes, tested it twice to make sure it was working, and then looked at her with an intensity that took her breath away. I will not let anything happen to you, he said fiercely. The moment things go wrong, the moment you feel unsafe, you say the code word and we come in. Do you understand? Sofia nodded, her heart pounding so hard she thought everyone must be able to hear it. Jin cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing across her cheeks. You are the bravest person I have ever met, he said softly. Thank you for trusting me. Sofia looked at him, at the sun rising behind him painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, at the beautiful house that had become familiar, at the man who had become so much more than she ever expected. She thought about her tiny apartment and her art classes and the life she had been living before she fell into Jin Park's lap at a charity gala. That life seemed impossibly far away now. That Sofia seemed like a different person. This Sofia, the one standing here in the morning light after surviving danger and discovering strength she did not know she had, wanted something different. What if I do not want my normal life back? She asked. What if I want this? Want you? Jin's eyes widened slightly, hope and disbelief warring in his expression. Sofia, you deserve better than a life with someone like me. You deserve someone normal and safe and uncomplicated. Sofia stepped closer to him, close enough to rest her hand over his heart. Jin Park, you listen to me. You are the kindest, most honorable man I have ever met. You protected me, taught me, made me laugh, and showed me that strength and gentleness can exist in the same person. Yes, your world is dangerous and complicated. But you are also working every day to make it better, to protect people, to build something good out of something difficult. How could I deserve anyone better than that? Jin caught her hand, pressing it harder against his chest where she could feel his heart racing. I love you, he said, the words coming out rough and urgent. I did not mean to. This was supposed to be business and arrangement. But Sofia, I love you. I have loved you since that first night when you were brave enough to pretend we knew each other, and I have been falling deeper every day since. Sofia felt tears spring to her eyes, but they were happy tears this time. I love you too. I think I have loved you since you made me ramen at midnight and told me about wanting to be a chef. Since I realized that Jin Park, the dangerous mafia boss, and Jin the boy with dreams are the same person, and I love both of them. Jin pulled her into his arms and kissed her properly, not the desperate kiss from before the warehouse but something slower and sweeter and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both smiling, the sun was fully risen and the world felt new and full of possibility. So what happens now? Sofia asked. Do I just move back in? Are we really doing this? Jin laughed, the sound lighter than she had ever heard from him. Yes, we are really doing this. But Sofia, I need you to understand what you are choosing. My life will always have danger in it, at least until I can fully transition the organization to legal operations, which could take years. I will understand if you need time to think about whether you can accept that. Sofia pretended to consider, tapping her chin thoughtfully. Let me think. On one hand, danger and complications. On the other hand, a man who cooks me midnight snacks, teaches me self-defense, appreciates art, and looks at me like I am the most important thing in his world. This is such a difficult decision. Jin grinned and pulled her close again. Is that a yes? That is absolutely a yes, Sofia said, and kissed him again to prove it. They went inside together as the sun climbed higher in the sky, and Sofia thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. 1 month ago, she had been a normal college student with normal problems. Then she had accidentally sat in a Mafia boss's lap while trying to avoid her ex-boyfriend, and everything had changed. She had agreed to be Jin's fake girlfriend to help him deal with a dangerous rival. But somewhere along the way, between breakfast conversations and art gallery visits and late-night ramen, the fake had become real. She had fallen in love with Jin Park, and miraculously, impossibly, he had fallen in love with her too. Over the following year, Sofia watched Jin work tirelessly to keep his promise. He cooperated with the prosecutor to expose Victor Choi's worst crimes, helping to put him away for 30 years. He used the information and connections from that case to begin the slow, dangerous work of transitioning his organization away from illegal activities. It was not easy. There were setbacks and threats and nights when Jin came home exhausted and discouraged. But Sofia was there beside him, supporting him, believing in him, reminding him why he was doing this when it got too hard. Sofia continued her art studies, but she also became involved in Jin's legitimate businesses, helping him establish a gallery that gave opportunities to young artists from difficult backgrounds. She moved her belongings permanently into Jin's home, and they turned one of the unused rooms into a studio where she could paint. Marcus and Isabella started dating after bonding over their shared experience of being pulled into Jin's complicated world, which made holiday gatherings entertaining. On the anniversary of the night Sofia fell into Jin's lap at the charity gala, Jin took her back to the Riverside Hotel for a private dinner in that same ballroom. Sofia wore a green dress, not because Jin had provided it but because she had bought it herself, earning money from her first gallery sale. They danced slowly in the empty room, and Jin told her again that he loved her, that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him, that he was so grateful she had been brave enough or crazy enough to sit on a stranger's lap and change both of their lives forever. So am I, Sofia whispered, resting her head against his chest. I would fall into your lap 1,000 times if it meant ending up here with you. Jin laughed and spun her around, and Sofia thought about fairy tales and how they never quite matched reality. Her love story had not started with a glass slipper or a kiss from a prince. It had started with fear and danger and a business arrangement that neither of them had expected to become real. But it was real now. The most real thing in Sofia's life was Jin Park's hand in hers, his love steady and true, his promise to build a better future together. She had fallen into a Mafia boss's lap by accident, but she had chosen to stay, chosen to love him, chosen to believe that even in a complicated and sometimes dangerous world, real love could find a way to bloom. And as they danced in that ballroom under the same chandeliers that had witnessed the beginning of their story, Sofia knew with absolute certainty that she had made the right choice. Her life was not normal or simple or what she had planned. But it was hers and it was full of love and that was everything she needed.